If you're going to Disney World and want to know all the details about the Little Mermaid ride at Magic Kingdom, this is the video for you. Hi, this is Susan from Moms Make It Magical, and if you're new here, I talk all about Disney and family travel with highly sensitive kids. Today we're going to be talking all about the Little Mermaid ride, and if you're like me and have a highly sensitive, sensory sensitive, or anxious child, it makes sense that you would want to understand each attraction so that it can help you avoid the meltdowns and ensure a smoother day at the parks. So before we get into the details, let's talk about some basic ride information. The Little Mermaid ride is officially called Under the Sea: Journey of the Little Mermaid, which is a mouthful, but this is located in the Fantasyland section of Magic Kingdom. You can actually see Prince Eric's castle right behind the ride. And if you are approaching the ride from Be Our Guest restaurant, you can also see there's Gaston's Tavern just around the corner. And on the other side, you can see that you can meet Ariel at her grotto. And then further down, you can also see that there is the Storybook Circus, where you'll find rides like the Barnstormer and also Dumbo. So the Little Mermaid ride officially debuted at Magic Kingdom's Fantasyland in 2012. So it is a little bit of a newer attraction, and it was part of that Fantasyland expansion. And this ride brings the beloved story of the Little Mermaid to life, complete with iconic music, visuals, and Disney's classic animatronics. And it's definitely inspired by that classic 1989 Disney film as it takes you through the journey of Ariel's story. So let's talk a little bit about the queue. It is very immersive, and the first part is mostly outdoors, kind of winding through rock formations, caverns, and water features. Some parts are a little bit shady, but the sounds of water and the atmosphere could be overstimulating for some kids. And then, as you can see here, the queue moves into a more covered area and then eventually goes completely indoors, and it gets darker as you are journeying under the sea. So the ride itself lasts around 7 minutes, and it takes place in these slow moving clamshell vehicles. And each clamshell fits usually 2 people. It can fit 3 if it's like an adult and 2 young children. And there is a lap bar that comes down for safety, as you can see, but there are no other restraints that are used. The ride is slow and fairly smooth, which is ideal for kids who prefer more of a gentle attraction. There's also no minimum height requirement, so babies and toddlers can ride this as well. So if you choose to purchase Lightning Lane Multipass, this ride is included in that. I probably wouldn't recommend it as a pre-selection because there are ways to ride this with minimal weights. For example, for us, we walked on it after fireworks, and it's also a good one if you're using early entry, but it is an option if that's the route that you want to choose. So now let's talk about 10 different sensory factors that might affect whether or not the Little Mermaid ride might be scary or overstimulating for your child. The first one is sudden noises, and I give this a 2 out of 5. The ride does have some moderate sound effects, but the majority of it is set to the familiar and fun music from The Little Mermaid. And the music and sounds do make sense in the context of what you're seeing, so none of it is super startling. I feel like most kids should find the music pleasant, but if your child is sensitive to sudden noises, the Ursula section might be a little bit jarring. I always like to differentiate noise level from sudden noises because noise level is kind of your overall volume level, and this one gets a 4 out of 5 because there is no break from background noise throughout this entire attraction, starting from even the queue. And because the ride itself is entirely indoors, it also contains the sound, making it feel louder than it would be if portions of it were outdoors. I would definitely be prepared with noise canceling headphones or even just simple earplugs if your child is sensitive to a loud volume of sound. I already mentioned the queue itself starts to become pretty dark as you enter the boarding area, and the ride is entirely indoors, so it is pretty dark overall. And certain parts of the ride, especially during the Ursula scene, are darker than the rest. And this might be unsettling for children who are afraid of the dark, but I would say that these sections kind of move on to brighter and colorful and more cheerful scenes, so it's kind of offset in some ways. So bright and flashing lights can be problematic for some people on attractions, but thankfully there aren't any flashing or strobe lights on this ride. The lighting is gentle and underwater themed without any harsh brightness to worry about, but it is important to note that some sections are more colorful and visually stimulating than others. This ride moves at a very slow and continuous pace, and the clamshell does rotate gently at different points, but this is mostly to give you a good viewing angle during various scenes. While the Little Mermaid ride does not have any drops, there is a section, what you're seeing right now near the beginning, where you kind of move backwards on an incline, and it will almost feel like you're laying back on a recliner looking up at the bubbles. It's supposed to simulate you going under the sea, and it's still a slow movement, but it could still be jarring for sensitive kids who may not have expected this to happen. This ride does include a scene with Ursula the Sea Witch, and that could be frightening for some younger or more sensitive kids. Her animatronic is large and the setting is darker, but it's a short segment in an otherwise bright and colorful ride. If your child is particularly sensitive to villains, this might be a little bit of a challenging moment. There are also some scary looking eels right above you before you enter the Ursula scene. As you leave this scene, you'll also see some blinking eyes in that very dark cave. Near the last scene, you'll see Ursula kind of screaming far off in the background. I have it zoomed in here. The last scene does include visuals of fireworks, which is something to note in case that's something scary for your kids. And this is an animatronic heavy ride, so if your kids are uneasy around animatronics in general, that's also something to be mindful of. The queue can feel a little bit crowded and claustrophobic for some, but the clamshell vehicles themselves do provide a decent amount of space once you are on the ride. You are separated from other riders that you don't know, so you are able to maintain a bit of a sense of personal space. There are also no strong or artificial smells used in this attraction, so this would be a good choice for kids who are sensitive to scents or who might get headaches from strong fragrances. Despite the underwater theme, you won't be getting wet on this ride, which is ideal for families who are looking to avoid sensory overload from water-based attractions. But the queue, I have noticed, can be a bit wet sometimes, especially due to all those water features. Alright, so we have a total score of 18 out of 50. And how we understand this number is that a lower number means less sensory overload, and a higher number means a greater likelihood of being overwhelmed or overstimulated. And this is a helpful data point for deciding which rides might cause sensory overload meltdowns in our sensitive and anxious kids. With a somewhat lower sensory score, Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid is generally a calm, not super thrilling ride at Magic Kingdom. It has a gentle pace, familiar music, and colorful scenes that could make this a decent choice for many families, especially those with sensitive or anxious children. And here are my overall thoughts. I think this is a mostly mild ride for highly sensitive children. The slow pace and colorful setting does make it a good option for most families. I would just be mindful of the fact that this attraction is completely indoors and it has portions that are very, very dark. And if your child is sensitive to villains, be aware of that section with Ursula and her little eel sidekicks. It's probably also not the greatest choice if you have children that are afraid of animatronics. But truthfully, for the majority of the ride, you'll be immersed in Ariel's bright and vibrant world, which is filled with fun music and charming characters. And I will say that this ride is a great opportunity to take a break from the Florida heat, since it is a completely indoor attraction that usually has fairly low wait times depending on the time of the year. And also because there is no height requirement, it's doable for your entire family, from babies to grandparents, to be able to ride this together. Have you ridden the Little Mermaid ride at Magic Kingdom with your kids? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe, like this video, and hit that notification bell so that you know when I share a new video about more tips on doing Disney and family travel with highly sensitive kids. And if you haven't already, make sure you download my free Disney Ride Planner tool. It's a printable so that you can keep track of which rides you'd like to try or not, and it'll make planning your park days way, way easier. I'll have the link for it in the description below. Thanks again for being here. Let's keep making magical memories with our families.